morning, everybody in TV land. This is Mike Hittner with Historic Point Boss Update. This morning, joining me is Tom Bramer on my right here.
Good morning.
And welcome, Tom.
Good morning.
Good morning. And we want to talk a little bit about some things that have happened in the past. We've had a couple things in the recent past. On March 17th and 18th, we had the Home and Garden Show. And we're always thankful to the used to be called Central Wisconsin Home Builders, but they call it Home and Garden Show now. Their emphasis is a little different than it was 32 years ago when we first started working with them. But they've always invited us back year after year after year. The previous year, of course, we were in the mall in the former Yonkers building. This year, we were at Assumption High School. And it was a great venue. I thought it was a great venue. We had a beautiful place that they put us on the stage. Well, Tom and I both went to Assumption, and we never were on the stage except
Just
to get
once.
the diploma. Tom got his diploma on the stage, and I don't know if I was missing. I don't remember it anyway, but
No, you were a year behind.
yeah, I probably was there too. So anyway, we were on the stage and we could display, different, different things we were doing. We had what do they call that, Tom? They were making the belt-like thing.
Oh, the ankle loom.
Ankle
Yeah,
loom.
yeah.
Sophie was working on that, and some other people, and we had another loom on a table. The gals could kind of demonstrate that. Don and Jim were working on a bench, and Don was more working on the bench. Jim was working on spoons. He had a whole bunch of blanks that he had kind of cut out, and then they were carving out, him and Scott and a few other people were carving out those. Larry Knutson, one of our members, had a little table down there and kind of a guessing game of what is this and what was it used for, and which stirs a lot of memories for a lot of people, especially older folks can kind of remember some of those different things that they had. And I don't think, from what I talked to Larry, I don't think anybody guessed all of them. They guessed some of them, more the common ones. He has usually some easy ones and then some harder ones, but it was a good, you and I worked pretty much on the floor handing out brochures about our sugar bush and stuff like that. What was your take on it, Tom?
I thought they did pretty well. I thought there was a good crowd. It wasn't all at once, thank goodness. Because we've had those too in the past where, the whole herd comes at once. But we were able to talk to people for a few minutes and hand out our schedules and talk about sugar bush and talk about
we gave them event schedule
event
for the whole
schedules,
year.
yeah. And it was kind of good to be able to do that one-on-one.
Well, and I liked it too, where we were at down below the stage, the people came in and left from the same door. So if we didn't catch them coming in, which a lot of times when they come in the door, they're looking at the displays that the other people had there, we got them on the way out where they were kind of gawking around, and then they saw us on the stage if they didn't see us originally. So I thought it was very, very effective for us. Yep. And I'd like to thank this Home Builders Association for their continued support over the years and for allowing us to have a booth there. It's great publicity for us, and hopefully it draws some people for them that might be interested in what Historic Point Boss is doing. And since our roots go back to the Home Builders, it's a great participation by both of us within that organization. So thanks to that. And then we segue on to the Sugar Bush, which was on March 24th, a Saturday, from 10 to 4 at the site. Your take from the cabin viewpoint?
I thought we did pretty well. There was a good group of people, not all at once, but it did spread out during the day, and that's kind of nice. There was quite a few people, considering the weather was not all that nice.
Well, and you had a great turnout there because one or two of the scout cubby troops came, and then there was, I don't know, 15 or so cubbies in that troop. And so they filtered through, and so
they came in as a group, and that was kind of a rush, but it was fine. The kids were really good. They were interested in what we were doing. Well, we were making candy, so I mean, why wouldn't they be interested? But we were doing some of that, and they asked a lot of neat questions and looked around. And the best part, I think, is that it gets them interested. If they haven't been there before, they could see what's going on, and then maybe they'll be back, either with a school group or with mom and dad.
And then the people at the gate were handing out our full schedule for events, so they know about our festival and our whodunit and the Fall Harvest Fair, and so they get a whole range of those. And we know that people can't make all of these events, but we encourage you to make as many as you can. And the real mystery and magic about the whole thing is get a membership.
Yeah.
I think one of our members figured out it was like $70 or $80 cheaper by buying it individually each time you come. Then
If you came to every event
Right.
with husband, wife, 2 kids.
right.
Yeah, it was like
$74 or
third.
$84
Yeah.
difference cheaper. So, I mean, if you're planning on coming to more than probably 2 events, it's worth it alone, let alone if you come to more. And we know many families out there do come to more than that. So, the cooking down of the sap, they did some of the primitive style, kind of a Native American style with the hot stones and the sap that was done in a big log, hollowed out log. That was pretty. They got it cooked down pretty good.
they got it good and hot. It was that's a difficult one, and this reverse engineering is tough.
Yes.
The native people, when they were doing it and had done it for thousands of years, literally, I mean, the knowledge that they had on how this works really good, we have to try and relearn, and we're not going to be able to.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't do that.
Well, their expertise was so good because it evolved over, you can imagine, hundreds of years.
Yeah. But they did really well. We tried some with the, now we don't have ceramic pots. What am I trying to say here? I can't say.
Clay pots?
Clay pots, thank you. That they would have had. Some tribes did, some didn't. But we tried to use that. We had a facsimile there, and they did get some maple sugar made in that.
Was that on the slate that they were?
Yeah,
was under?
Although with that ceramic one, if you heat it slowly with the liquid in it, you can get that right on the coals, but you have to be pretty careful.
We know that on most of the Native Americans, and also for us that do a little bit, we tapped our trees out there, of course, is if you take that ice off, that's your biggest reduction right away.
Yep.
Because that cold nights forms that ice on top, and you get rid of a eighth or a tenth in the morning and that sort of thing.
That's a big help. And the guys cooking in the kettle, of course, they can really cook that big kettle.
Yeah.
And the natives would have, once European contact became a regular thing, let's say, well, in here, let's say after our revolution, so the end of the second half of the 1700s, there was a good deal of cast iron and other metal containers used by the Native Americans. They got them through trade. So they, I think, quickly adapted the other method of making syrup.
Because when I talked the last time, we had talked about the Native Americans in Michigan and how much they exported. They were using metal by that time.
Absolutely.
There's no way they could have done that with stones and stuff like that. They would have been at it for 3 years trying to get that.
And that I'm quite sure was brought on, as you talked last time, because of the demand. The people who were buying it went to them and said, "Hey, here's a good way to earn a bunch."
Right.
So that, and those folks are, they didn't survive here all these years by not taking advantage of what they came upon.
It'd be interesting when we get that information from Michigan. Is we were told like 4 cents a pound or something for the maple sugar. Did they get it in money, which probably didn't mean anything to them, or did they probably get it in trade goods or credits at a store or something?
Or all of the above.
Yeah.
I know I just read a story written about some Omaha Indians, a woman who was the first Native American doctor in the U.S. And they got some of their money in gold coin, or some of their payments, gold coin, some of it in tangible goods, blankets, beef in kegs, that sort of stuff, and then also in credits with the traders that worked with them. So, yeah, all of the above, I think.
All of the above.
I'm just guessing, but if I had to guess, that was what I would guess.
In our cooking in the big iron pot, Jim Nickels was in charge of that, and that went real well. I poured the sap in the morning, so I knew how much went in there, and I could tell by, later afternoon that was down probably by 2/3 almost. Had cooked a lot of water out of that, and that fire was going pretty strong all day. And then, of course, Don Matthews and some other volunteers were in the 3 bay, and Don was working on benches or legs for benches or whatever. Skip Johnson was in the barn and had tours of the barn and talking about his trolley that he wants to get up and running this summer. And then the house was great. I had heard so many comments about those buckwheat pancakes. In fact, I was excuse me, I was down to the store several days following. They said, "What buckwheat mix did those ladies have in the house?" And I happened to have pre-knowledge of that, what they had used, and so I said, "Oh, right here." I said this, and they just loved it because buckwheat is one of those things we really don't get much of anymore. But I think it was not a staple, but was more in the diet of the people. The rye and buckwheat was more in the diet of the early settlers than we realize, and very versatile. Though we think of it as pancakes or maybe buckwheat groats, or we use it for stuffing and sausage or something like that. But it was very versatile. And then of course we had Andy from Heritage Hill. He works there most of the time, and he was doing. We got this big antique loom upstairs. Takes up half the room. And Andy knows how to use that, and so that was a great demonstration of him. And I don't know how much he did, but I and a couple other members were there watching him, and I think he increased by probably 4 or 5 inches in that half an hour or whatever we watched him. So
I thought he said like 3 feet total.
3 feet total.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I saw him. For the time I was there, like a half an hour, he did 4 or 6 inches. Of course, he was talking a lot, and I don't think you're doing it as quickly as if you were just weaving. But he did a great job in explaining it. What the beauty of it is, you could explain it in layman's terms of how it worked, and some of the gals had more technical knowledge or interest in it, and they were asking, well, how do you put this through, and that sort of thing. But it was a great time, and we thank Andy for coming down and sharing with us that day. I mean, it was very nice. It was just a chance meeting at a trade fair, and a few words said to him, and he showed up. I mean, it was magnificent, really. And then the gals were giving tours, of course, and buckwheat pancakes. They had, I think, Janet McLaughlin was almost in charge, one person in charge of that. You almost have to have somebody on the stove, and I think they had some cornbread there and some other things, and of course maple syrup to put on everything. So it was very successful. And then our newest building, the bunkhouse, Larry Knutson has kind of adopted that, and Larry was over there interpreting it as a Sawyer traveling woodsman that was going through the area. And of course, this was for those travelers that came through the area and also worked for Wakely. He needed a place to stay for them. He didn't want to put them in his inn because that's taking away paying customers, so he put them in his bunkhouse that he built, and we know he had one. And so Larry was interpreting that as a Sawyer, somebody, a woodsman traveling through the area. So Larry had a nice turnout in there, and he had a good time in there interpreting for people. And so all in all, the school had a nice turnout up there. I was up at the school, visited for a little while, and they were doing really well up there. Mostly the garden gals were up there operating it at the time, because there was some other things going on at the time, just to put it that way. And so not everybody could be there that would normally be there. So they did a great job, and we're always thankful for the master gardeners, because besides gardening, they do so much other things on our site. I think a lot of times we think master gardens, well, they're only working in the gardens or weeding them or watering them or developing them, but they're contiguous. They've worked right into the fabric of our organization, and they do all kinds of things. So
they've kind of adopted us. It's really cool.
Yes. Well, if you've seen Tom and I's first attempts at gardens, you wonder why those first settlers didn't starve, right, Tom?
No wonder the people of Jamestown starved, because they were like us.
Yeah,
Holy
for sure.
mackerel.
For sure. So that's kind of a wrap-up of what has transpired in this past month. We had talked a little bit about it coming up. Now we're talking about it having actually happened. So now we've got some great video footage of things that happened at the Home and Garden Show at Assumption High School that we attended and were part of, and also at Sugarbush on March 24th. So take some time and enjoy this. Thanks for listening.
Well, here it is. It's Sugarbush time at Historic Point Bass. The temperatures have been nice and warm during the daytime and have been cool at night. This is ideal for maple syrup time. The warm temperatures cause the sap to rise up in the tree, and the cool temperatures at night drop it back down. And it's this constant back and forth motion that causes the sap to flow. So let's see what Historic Point Bass residents are up to. Well, here we are at the house. They're making some buckwheat pancakes, and they sure look good. So we'll have to sample those in just a little while. Here they've just brought out some cornbread out of the oven. They're nice and piping hot, and they sure do look good. We'll have to ask the lady what she's doing with these cornbread.
We're just taking our cornbread out of the mold, cast iron pan. Making sure they don't stick and fall apart on us.
Well, they look good.
Oh, they taste good.
And it's an old recipe.
Yes.
Oops.
Well, here's the table. It's set up with a lot of plates and some food on the table already. They're just putting more food out there. And that'll be us sitting at the table in just a little while to sample that great food. And here we have one of the residents teaching a young lady on how to do quilting. They did hand quilting back in the 1840s, the 1860s, and they used old material to make their quilts. And once the quilt was made, they did a lot of hand quilting. All the ladies would gather together and spend the time quilting. And on a nice cool spring day, this little parlor oven sure looks inviting. Here we have a couple gentlemen that are sitting at the table and playing some of the parlor games that they would have played back in 1840 to 1860. He has a little puppet type character there in his hand, and you get to be able to make the man dance and do a lot of different things, and the other one is putting together a puzzle. Hopefully he'll get that together pretty soon and we can see what it looks like. Well, here's one of our visitors working on a church pew doll. Back in 1840 to 1860, church pew dolls were made by the mothers. If the child was starting to act up in church, the mother would take a handkerchief from the gentleman, take a little bit of sugar if they had it with them, or another little piece of material, wad it up, put it in the middle of the handkerchief, take some thread, and they would wrap it around just below that, tie it off, and it would form a head. Then they would take the corners of that handkerchief then and stretch them out sideways, tie off just to the edge of the head on both sides of the head, and this would give your little church pew doll the arms. You could also tie down a little bit farther and get more of a little waistline on there. So this was one of the early versions of what we now call a pacifier in our day and age. So let's see what the church pew doll looks like. Starting to hold some good shape.
Are we set? Okay. We're gonna make some maple candy. Oh, okay with me. Now, this is crushed ice, of course, would you use? Oh, this is a little hard. Damn it. Well, we'll get the idea. Put it on the snow. I'll warm up the next batch. All right, this is going to sugar already. The idea is to put the liquid maple sugar. Oops, that's sticky as heck. Of course, then you can lick your fingers. Tell you what we'll do. just make some maple sugar. Because that's what it is. It's cooked down enough now.
Well, here we are back in the house. Upstairs there's an antique loom that was a handmade loom back in the early 1800s and was brought over from Europe. This loom is completely portable. And here we have a gentleman who's from Heritage Hill State Park doing some weaving on our loom. He's actually one of the first ones to make something on our loom since it was donated to us. He's using some cotton material that would have been used from scraps from old worn out clothing. And also there's the string going back and forth on there is some cotton thread. He'll run the shuttle down through there and then take the overhanging beater bar and tighten it up. And as you can see, he raises and lowers the heddles using his feet. He uses it without shoes that we can get a better feel for where the pedals are, and it's just like riding a bicycle. It's just up and down to raise and lower the heddles. So in between there is when he's doing the beating and passing of the shuttle. Here we are out at near the 3-bay shed, and we're watching them boil down some syrup.
Underneath the kettle, but inside the kettle we have maple syrup. Started off with 10 gallons and it's slowly boiling down to turn into syrup. Stuff to pour over pancakes and waffles, mix in your coffee.
Remember how when we were over there and she said it has to get really hot down to a boil to make it syrup? Yeah.
Yep.
Well, he's just speeding it up, putting it over the
We're
fire.
helping it, trying to keep it going, trying to keep it boiling, and it's been hard with the wind. Temperature really doesn't have a lot to do with it today, but with the wind, that's what we're having a hard time with.
So, I bet you the maple syrup tasted better with the smoky taste.
Yeah,
That's how you're tasting.
it's a lot warmer over here, but by the thing when we first started, it's so cold over there for the over here.
Yeah. Do you know what this is?
No,
The stick.
no. I should already know that, but
What you
I
do,
Listen.
you put a hole into the tree, grow a little bit of a hole, you pound this in, and as the sap comes up through the ground, up through the branches or the trunk of the tree, it'll flow out here and down into a bucket.
Just like the bucket that was over by that tree. They had one of those sticking out of the tree. Remember that?
Yeah.
And it collects the sap for us. Then we haul it over here, and we'll start a fire and dump it in, create our syrup. So we can have it on pancakes later.
All right.
Seems like a lot of work, don't it? For some pancakes?
Did you know how many, it's 10 gallons of sap, how much syrup do you think we'll get out of there? It's like 10 gallons of milk we put in there.
20?
Nope,
30?
about
Going the wrong way.
soda cans worth.
Oh.
Better get a quart. If
2
you're
soda
lucky.
cans.
Might get a little more, but about a quart.
Okay. I want to see what the that is.
So you also have to understand back in 1840 to 1860 in that era, there was not refrigeration. Syrup has to be kept cold. In the late 1850s, you did have canning, but it was new. People did not really believe that canning would preserve the food, so they did not use it. Not until Civil War and later. So just about everything went into sugar. Made maple sugar. To go from maple syrup to maple sugar is a matter of, depends on the size. If you take a quart of, take a pint of syrup, put it in a frying pan, heat it up and stir it constantly. 15 minutes later you'll have sugar. So in 1846, over in Travis, Michigan, which is right straight across from us, 222 Native Americans sold 176,000 pounds
Holy
of
cow.
maple sugar.
That's a lot of money.
Because they were trying to get rid of
lot
the
of sugar.
dependence. Yeah, they were trying to get rid of the dependence on cane sugar. They made 4 cents a pound for it. And cane sugar was selling for about the same thing. So it comes out kind of even.
The fire would go off.
No, I used to boil in some.
So there's a lot of work involved in it.
I want to see what
Fireman.
But as they say, it's a sweet reward.
Well, here we are, over where how the Native Americans would have done it, in a hollowed out log, putting in a hot rock into the maple sap, and that would generate enough heat where it would get it down to syrup. Once they had syrup, they'd put it into they could put it into a pot, get it near the fire, heat it up, and stirring it, and they'd be able to make some maple sugar. So they just do a little stirring there and keep going until it turns to a nice light brown. And then they would take it while it's still warm, but it'd be down into the maple sugar stage. And they would put it into some birch bark cones, or they would put them into a little hollowed out round piece into some wood and make little round biscuits out of them. Well, here we are. We're headed to the Wisconsin Rapids Home and Garden Show at Assumption High School. So here we have one of the historic Point Bass residents weaving a placemat. She's using 2 pieces of material to go over and under some other cotton material that is stretched from the bottom of the loom to the top of the loom. So this weaving over and under is just like using a large loom. It's just that this is a laptop version, and it's designed and made so that it's the size of a placemat. So they would have, if they wanted a table runner, they could have made a longer frame.
Wisconsin Rapids Home Show. And we have with us our Master Gardeners. Now, as you remember from past programs, our Master Gardeners joined us at Historic Point Bass. And they have a heritage garden there that they grow things that we will be cooking in the house on our antique cook stove. So I'd like to introduce you to the Master Gardeners, and they're going to explain a little bit about what they're doing today for the children here at the Home Show. So take it away.
Well, we have a little guessing game here where the children can tell what you need to for a plant to grow and what you need for a person to grow. And we're giving them little kits to grow peanuts and sunflower seeds, to grow sunflowers. And we also have all of our Master Gardener pamphlets and information on the excellent Master Gardener volunteer program.
Going to be planting a lot of herbs for the kitchen garden. We're also going to be trying to do a small cotton crop. We realize that we don't have the right climate for cotton, but we're going to try it anyway. We're really interested in what's involved in that. We are also going to be planting regular type vegetables and some other plants that children would be interested in trying. We're trying to get children interested in gardening, so when we bring the schools out, the schools go through all the things at Point Bass, and one of the things they do is come to our gardens, and we try to get them enthusiastic about gardening, and we try to get them by doing tactile things like touching plants and smelling plants, and in some cases eating plants because we can't stop them from eating them. And so we try to grow things that they would be interested in also.
Okay, last year I know that you tried growing, and this is what the seed looks like. And this is broom corn seed. And we grew a batch of broom corn last year, and once it's in the fall, you harvest it, and we can actually make brooms for the different buildings out at Historic Point Bass. So this year we're planning on planting even more broom corn seeds to make that an activity for anyone that would like to learn how to make a broom at Historic Point Bass. So, well, thank you so much for your help at Historic Point Bass. We look forward to all the interesting things the Master Gardeners are going to help us out with this year.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Spring.
I'm Larry Knutson from Historic Point Bass here at the 2018 Home Show at Assumption High School. I've got a display here that I talk about with the people that come in, and it's called the What Is It table. And it's items from the 1840s, 1850s that were used, and some of them even before that time, but extended through the 1840s and 1850s. Some of the items I've got here is this pottery jug. A lot of people guess what it is. They think it's for like moonshine or something, and it's not. It's a hot water bottle. And you would put hot water in here a couple times to get the pottery nice and warm and toasty, and then you'd put your final hot water in here and put it in your bed down by your feet and keep your feet nice and toasty for probably several hours. So it's something that was really nice if you had a homestead or someplace with a bed. So another item I've got is this item here. It can be used for a multitude of things, but the main purpose was for harvesting ice. When you cut an ice block, you'll have two types of ice in that block. You'll have the bottom part, which is very see-through, and then the top part, which is kind of white and not very see-through. And you don't want, when you put your ice in the ice house, you do not want that white part on the ice because it doesn't keep well. So you take that block and you score it with a saw a little bit, and then you can take this and hit that line, and the two pieces will crack apart. Plus it's got a serrated edge on there where you can kind of groom your cube a little bit to make it nice and level to fit in the ice house. This item here is for what they called a bit and brace. It's the for drilling like this, you know, the bit and brace thing. But this is a tool that went in there for cutting leather gaskets. You could set whatever size gasket you wanted when you needed one and cut it. It's got cutting edges on here, and a very handy tool for the homesteader. Another item that we have, it's the same purpose, but two different styles. And this one is the easiest one to demonstrate. It goes on your hand like this. And what these are for is for husking corn. When they harvested corn by hand before all the machinery and things, they wanted to get that husk off so they could grind the corn or get the corn kernels off later and didn't have to carry that husk around. So they would go in the field, put this in the top of the corn husk, and then rip it down. It would lay open. You could take the cob out, snap it, and then throw it in the wagon. So very nice tool that made life a lot easier when you're harvesting corn, because they did raise a lot of corn. So another item that I have here, I have it in this form, and then I have it in a seashell like this. This is the original American glue, if you will. It is pine sap and charcoal. And this is the same stuff that the Indians use to make birch bark canoes, to glue the birch bark together. But for birch bark canoes, you need it more pliable. This is very brittle with just the sap and charcoal. So for making the canoes, they would add fat to it. Fat makes it more pliable, and they do just the perfect recipe on how to make that. the voyageurs that went through Canada during the fur trade and came here too carried buckets of this because they would be gone for months at a time and they needed to repair their canoe during that time, so they would carry it. You would have it, how you use it, I would carry it in my hunting pouch in small quantities like this, just for small repairs and things.
Good morning,
Put it
vendors.
in
We
fire
have
and it
people ready to come through the doors. I just want to make sure everybody is ready. There's a couple of announcements that I need to make. We have moved the
This is my
raffle
fire starting kit.
for the
I have a flint and steel in here,
grill and drill and those types of items.
which I use
in the back row
to
in number 52.
get a spark, to
so
get an
people are
ember.
asking where to put
And
those
one
drawing
item I
slips.
have with that
It's
is
in the
this
back row
called
in
char
number
cloth.
52.
This is cloth that's
The
made
scavenger
the same as
hunt
charcoal,
box was put in
except
the
instead
entryway in the
of
lobby.
wood,
So if you
and
have
you put
people
that on
looking for
there as
that,
you strike,
there are
get a
12
spark,
American
and
flags
then you
that
put
are
this
marked
in your tinder to make your fire.
It may be
So I would have, as a hunter, I would have 2 or 3 of these sets with me because life out in the wilderness was oftentimes
So we have about 4 minutes
based
before we
on
allow people to come
survival
through the door.
where you
Again,
needed a fire.
the raffle.
Another thing, if you were out in the wilderness for an extended amount of time, you might run out of the char cloth. So you needed to find something in the wilderness to take its place to make a fire. So you would look for what's called punk wood.
We've moved the
It's partially
vendors from
deteriorated wood,
the hallway
and
in
it's real
here so that
spongy.
they get a little more traffic.
And when you go through the process of charcoaling
And the
this,
scavenger hunt box
you end up
is in
with
the
what's called char punk.
Thank you.
There's little pieces like this, and it's the same purpose. You take your striker and you strike down though to get an ember in there. You take that out and you make your fire. So having a char punk, as long as you could find it in the wilderness, you could stay out there for as long as you wanted. Another item I have is cordage like this, and it's impregnated with potassium nitrate. I use a good source of potassium nitrate when you're in the wilderness is black powder. It has potassium nitrate in the black powder. And you take water and soak this in that black powder. This originated from the old matchlock rifles. But when the matchlock rifles fell out of favor, they still made this because it was used for lighting cannons, not for the fuse, but for lighting the cannon. Then also, it's a good item to keep in your fire kit because it starts very easily again with your flint and steel. And a small piece like this will last you for a very long time because, as the term is, slow match or match cord, it burns extremely slow. It doesn't actually burn, you get an ember on there, and so it just burns really slow so you can use it over and over and over. Also very handy for lighting your pipe because you can control it for lighting your pipe. Last item I have here it's a horn with wax in the end. And some would use wax and some would use oiled leather. What this is for, as a hunter, I would carry this in my pouch. If I'm out and about and I fall in the water, I need to get dry so I don't get hypothermia. So I would come out of the water, get this out of my pouch. In here, I have rope, and it would have been a hemp rope or manila rope in here. You take your knife and remove the wax on here, take the rope out, and that's your tinder for making a fire. In here, I may also have a piece of the slow match, so it stayed dry as well for starting the fire. Once you got your fire going, you can melt the wax on here to reseal it, so you've got it handy just in case you fall in the water again. So, that's a few items I brought this time along for the What Is It table. I'm hoping you come out to Point Bass in the future at our events. We've got many, many more items out there that we love to talk about, and we try and make history interesting for the people that come out and visit our wonderful site out there. Thank you.
begin with, I'm making a wooden bench, a four-legged bench. And previously, I've made these legs and used I'm on video. And I use this tool. This is called a chair leg tool. And what it does is it cuts the leg so the dowel will go into the seat, and it also makes a ledge so the leg can't get up, can't go farther than the bottom of the seat. So the strength of the leg is the weight is sitting on this ledge instead of just under some kind of pressure, wedge. So this goes in there, and you cut this leg, and it makes the dowel. And then now I'm drilling the hole for this dowel into this slab of oak. And what I'm trying to do is get an angle so the end of the leg is out at the outer point of this slab of wood. So I'm angling, and I'll be drilling through. Every now and then I have to check to see that my angle is correct and that we're getting to this side too, because I want this edge to be right in line with that. So I'm going to go, and I have to check to see when the point goes through. When it goes through, when I go through with the point, I'll back off, and we'll turn it over, and then we'll try. At this angle, it's a little bit difficult to get any. I probably went too far. What works best if you can just get the very point of this drill through this end, and then you take and start it again and finish it from this side, so you don't rip out so much wood. Right now I went too far. It's going to work. So I'll probably have to carve out the rest of the hole. And reversing the drill works really well when you are making a hole that goes straight through wood. But at this point, the auger is going to one side. So I just clean that hole out with a curved gouge. And then what I need to do is flip it again. And if you see on this side, I need to carve out the bottom of the slab to make a flat surface for the lathe. As you see, when I put the leg in, it doesn't match up with the slab. So I'm going to have to carve out this side of the wood to make it fit. Okay, this is the finished bench. It makes a fairly strong bench, good enough for 2 or possibly even 3 people. The reason we made it shorter than 8 foot is it is quite heavy. It's going to be a fairly heavy bench, and then a couple people or 3 people can sit on it. And, many times we see at our site that you have an 8-foot bench and there's only a couple people sitting on it anyway. And there was one process that I don't believe has been recorded on another video. When I got all 4 legs in, then I set it on the ground, and the shortest leg, if it's approximately what I want, this bench is about 17 inches high, and that's made more for adults. We plan on making some that are down into the 14 and 15 and 16, and different size benches for different people, because there's a comfort level on a bench where your legs are almost flat with the bench, and And if you're sitting on a bench that's too low, you get so it's you have to be a little careful when you're making benches, you know, just to know that one certain level doesn't work for all. The only thing that needs to be done yet on this bench is to secure the legs with a wedge, and you always wedge pushing this grain, pushing the end grain this way. If you put your wedge like this, it would spread this way and break the grain of the top of the seat. So that's it.
A pre-design of a spoon. We're going to make a wooden spoon. First we're going to chisel out the base or the bowl of the spoon. Being careful to keep it away from the edge. So that way we don't lose the strength of the wood of the spoon too soon. As we chisel out our bowl of the spoon,
Maybe that's about right there. There. Right in line there.
switch it around so we can continue with the grain.
Looks like
Keep it about a 1/4 inch from the edge to start off with.
I'm going to make some nice spoons.
As we go around.
Is that a basket we have? It is white pine. Stop is right. See, this is about the right angle.
So once we get the bowl carved out of the spoon, then we need to round out the rest of it, shape the back side of the spoon, and that we'll do with a knife. And we'll end up carving that away until we get down to our desired thickness. So you always want to make sure that you cut away from yourself. You use your thumb to kind of push your knife along. And this makes some really quick work getting it down to where you need to be. Once we get the back side of the spoon down to where we need it to be, then we'll work along the handle, get it to be a more round. We can shape the back side, we can carve that down. We can either use the gouge that Scott was using, or we can use a knife and cut it down. So then once we get it down into where it's closer to being a spoon, then we'll come back along and we'll take out the impurities like Scott's doing right now on ours, and I've got one that's getting a little bit closer to being done. So we'll sand out all of our knife marks, our gouge marks, and we'll keep using different grits of sandpaper until it comes out to be nice and smooth. Then we'll put a finish on it, and it's ready for the kitchen now. So how's your spoon come there, Scott?
It's pretty good. I kind of like the grain right here, where it shows the center of the tree.
Kind of looks like a little eye in there looking up at you.
Yes. Smiling too.
Yeah, smile. Yeah. Once you get through with that part,
We should call that an emoji.
An emoji, huh?
Yeah.
An emoji spoon.
Yeah, and in like 200 years they'll use it a lot.
That's true. So do you have a special plan for your spoon, or?
No. Cooking, I was thinking.
So as soon as it gets finished, someone's got to make the soup so you can
exactly
stir it then, huh?
That's my wife.
There you go.
Have her make dinner.
So even though our two spoons are the same, you know, start out the same, maybe you can see
they ended up different.
They end up different. Each spoon is going to take on its own personality. You know, mine has all straight grain. Yours has a nice little round eye in there. So.
Yes. And then down at the handle, it's kind of swirled.
Got a swirled grain going there. Mine's just completely straight, so. Mine will just be good for stirring. That's it. We'll be able to look at it and say, hey, there's some neat features in there. So hopefully we'll get done with them today.
Yeah, that should work.
Have soup tonight.
Exactly.
Somebody should be making that soup right now.
You can't make a soup until you get done with the spoon.
Well, this is true.
And Don, what are you doing?
I'm trying to make a square surface for this leg to fit to this log.
So what happens if you don't have a square surface down there?
It makes the leg wobble after a while because it's not.
So you want that shoulder of the leg to fit on something really flat then, huh?
Yeah. And here's the shoulder of the leg. And the more you can get this square with the bottom of the seat or the slab of wood, the less the pressure is going to be on the dowel inside the wood. So just makes it last longer. It's just another process for the better you make it, the longer it lasts.
You want a nice flat fit there so that when you sit on it, it's not going to wobble all over that, huh?
It would probably be okay for a while, but after a few years, then it would get looser. You'd have to repair it.
Well, we'd like to thank everyone for coming out to see us today, and we hope to see you out at our Sugar Bush and some of our other events that are going on throughout the year. So, hope to see you soon out at Historic Point Bass. Okay. Well, here's my spoon that I finished for you, the gals out in the kitchen. So,
nice.
Take that out to the house, make some soup for us, and then we'll be back and we'll eat the soup.
I love the craftsmanship. It's very smooth.
Well, thank you. We got a little bit of oil to put on it yet. Once we get the oil on it, it will have a nice, smoother finish, and it'll be ready for stirring up the soup.
It looks great. I think we can definitely work with soup.
Okay.
Thank you so much.